everyone, my name is Danila Grando and I'm a researcher and a teacher at RMIT. I'm also a former healthcare employee that taught infection control in hospitals. So I wanted to put together 4 practical tips that you may not be that familiar with in order to prevent coronavirus and in fact all respiratory virus infections. Do you realise that most adults get between 2 to 3 respiratory infections a year? And in children this can be as high as 4 or 5 a year. So what can we do to lessen the number of respiratory infections that we get? Well, you might be pleased to know that I've gotten as low as 1 respiratory infection in 6 years. So we can certainly make a difference to how often we get a respiratory infection. Now, my first important tip relates to understanding what happens with respiratory infections. I love this picture. It's from a textbook at RMIT that we used to teach our students, and it shows a sneeze against a black background. Now, the top particles are the airborne particles that most people are familiar with, but they will fall to the ground within 1 metre. So they're actually not the most important source of infection. The most important source are these big blobbies of mucus that fall to the surfaces around you. And when you touch these surfaces with your hands, you pick up the mucus, and then if you're eating, you pop that in your mouth. That is the most significant way that most people get respiratory infections. So that's a fairly easy point to understand, but how do we actually prevent putting the virus into our mouth? Now, firstly, before we leave that point, let's think about sneezing. We all know that you should sneeze into your elbows, but please bend over to do this. You don't want to sneeze outwards, you want to sneeze down, okay? Did you notice I have my virus dress on today? So we want to minimise these viruses getting out into the air. We want them to go down on the ground. Okay, now number 2, my second point is avoid snacking. I've got some pictures here. Let's put them the right way up. We've got lollies, we've got chips, we've got sandwiches. No snacking between meals. This is because when people don't wash their hands and they pick up food with their hands and put it in their mouth, and this could be even chewing gum, that's how they're introducing the virus. So when we had outbreaks in hospitals, what we said to the staff was that you weren't allowed to eat at the nursing station. You actually had to take a break, go downstairs, wash your hands before you eat. So washing your hands is very important, but if you can't wash your hands, then always carry alcohol hand hygiene. Now, if you don't have alcohol hand hygiene and you want to snack, you cannot snack. So no snacking during respiratory virus season, okay? Very important. Now, my third point for you is something that's not spoken about very much, but obviously there's a lot of respiratory secretions during respiratory influenza and other respiratory virus seasons. So you can see a person here blowing their nose into a tissue. When you blow your nose, blow and then throw into the rubbish bin, okay? No second use of the tissue, because when the tissue gets wet, it's a source of virus. So make sure that you dispose of your tissues as soon as you've sneezed, and then you need to wash your hands again. Of course, if you've got your alcohol hand hygiene product, that's what you're going to use. Have it on hand so that when you blow your nose, you always sanitize your hand after you've actually blown your nose. Now, we can minimize our respiratory secretions by actually using nasal decongestants. So think about going to the chemist and getting something like Sudafed or an antihistamine that helps dry up the secretions, and that way you won't be spreading as many secretions around. You know, secretions are mucus, and mucus is beautifully protective for viruses. So we need to minimise the amount of mucus that we are spreading around, and mucus can stay on a a solid surface and protect viruses for up to 24 hours. So really important. Now, if you're washing your hands after you've gone to the toilet, don't forget there might be door handles or tap handles that you're handling on the way out. That's why we should always use paper towel to open and close taps, and I even use my clothing in order to open and close the doors. So I've made this picture for you. Here's my little door handle, and can you see all those little virus particles on the outside of the door? You can see they've got lovely crown of spikes there, those viruses, and that's our coronavirus with its spikes ready to attach to you. So please remember that picture in order to remember that when you're touching surfaces that you could be picking up viruses from that surface. But there's no need to be obsessive about this. You only need to wash your hands after going to the toilet and when you're going to eat. And that's why we shouldn't snack in between meals. We should only eat once we've sat down after washing our hands or after using our alcohol hand hygiene. So, 4 important points. Let's have a look at those again. 1, understand it's not just airborne. You know, the masks aren't really going to be that helpful. Really, number 1 is stop contact transmission, contacting surfaces and then putting it in our mouth. Number 2, avoid snacking, okay? Always wash your hands before you're eating, or don't eat if you haven't used a sanitizer on your hands. Number 3, minimize your respiratory secretions, and remember with tissues, only use them once, straight into the rubbish. And number 4, think about if you're going into a lunchroom to eat, do you have to handle the door on the way in? Remember, use your clothing to open and close doors if you've already washed your hands. If you can't do that, then you need to wash your hands before you sit down and eat. So, my challenge to you is see if you can get through this season of respiratory infections without catching a respiratory virus. And if you follow those 4 steps, hopefully you'll get to the point of minimising your respiratory infections and see if you can get only 1 in 5 years. Now, if you've got any questions or you found this video particularly helpful, please leave a comment under this video. Thanks very much.